Okay, so welcome everyone to the first ever Student Social Sunday. So my name is Kyla, I'm the Student Programs Coordinator for Operation Smile UAE. And beside me, who has just gone out of view, is Morag, our Executive Director. So Morag is our guest speaker for today. So she's going to be running through with us um, how she managed to get to be the executive director and the kind of career path she took to get there. So, Morag, do you want to explain a little bit about what being an executive director means?
Wow, well, good to see everybody here today. I love working with students. My whole background is in education. So it was an easy path in some ways to move from being a teacher to an education advisor and then more into working with students, medical volunteers in a charity that is for children.
So, what kind of things do you do on a daily basis?
So on a daily basis, I've got lots of jobs to do. So partly I've got to spread awareness about the charity so that more and more children that have got cleft conditions can seek the help, or their parents can seek the help that they need. And sometimes the parents didn't even know that this help was available to them. Many thought that they would never be able to afford the surgeries that their children needed. Some of them didn't even know that the children's cleft lips and cleft palates could be repaired. So I have got to get as many ways of getting the word out there. Then I've got to recruit medical volunteers. So I need to get plastic surgeons, pediatricians, nurses, dentists, speech and language therapists. I need to get them all on board and be ready and willing to help all of these children. And then, of course, we need the funds. So we need to do some fundraising. So we've got to come up with ideas, or I've got to go and visit people and try and persuade them to give some money towards this, or come up with various ideas of how to raise the funds. If it's not just, simply donating money, we've got to come up with different ideas of being able to fundraise. And then, of course, I've got to work with hospitals, because Operation Smile doesn't have a hospital of its own or a clinic of its own. So we need to work with hospitals wherever we can and be able to persuade them to give us the use of their operating rooms, of their pre-post-op wards and the equipment that they've got, so that we can actually operate on the children that we need. Then, of course, that's not just stopping there, because then we've got to work with the Ministry of Health or the Department of Health or the Dubai Health Authority. So there's lots of different things that go on in my daily life.
What would you say? I know there's lots of different things that you could say is your favorite, but what's your favorite aspect of the job?
Oh, undoubtedly seeing the children. Seeing the children, and especially seeing their smiles after they've had their surgery. And even getting all the hugs from the mums and the dads and the grannies and everybody that are so happy to see their children and their grandchildren having their cleft lips repaired and their cleft palates, and knowing that they will be able to smile like any other child and not be teased and ridiculed at school or laughed at. This is really important to me.
So most of the people on the call just now, I think everyone here knows that Operation Smile UAE was founded in 2011, but how did you come about with Operation Smile? How did you get involved?
Oh, wow. So back in 2010, I was coming to the end of a 3-year contract as an education advisor with the school improvement program in the UAE. And I was very, very friendly with one of the sheikhs in the royal family in Abu Dhabi, Her Highness Sheikh Abdulaziz bin Saif Al Nahyan, Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed's wife. He's the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. So we were speaking, and she said to me, I want us to work together again. And at first we were going to do something in education, because we both have master's degrees in early childhood education. And so we were very keen to help children. And then when it got to May, she said to me, I want to set up a charity. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. What kind of charity? She says, no, no, no. She says, I want you to help me. So I said, well, if we're going to be doing other stuff as well. She says, well, I really want to set the charity up first. I know that education is your love, but, I want to set up the charity. And I said, well, what's not educational about charity? So what kind of charity would you like? And she said, I want to help children with cleft lips, cleft palate, and other facial anomalies. Well, I stood there. I could have been knocked down with a feather because I thought, wow, where did she get this idea from? And when I asked her, she said she had read an article in one of the newspapers when she'd been in London, but she couldn't remember which newspaper or what the article was, so there was no way that I could find this article. So what we did was we sat down and we researched charities that are focusing on cleft lip, cleft palate, children, facial deformities, and we came up with 4 or 5 interesting ones. But we really liked Operation Smile because it deals with students as well. And to me, that was like a huge bonus because my whole background was in education. So I wanted still to be able to work with students and then to be able to go into hospitals and teach and train people in there to help have the empathy to come and help the children that would never be able to go to school without having their cleft lip or cleft palate treated. So in the June of 2010, I was asked if I would go to a mission in Morocco to see how Operation Smile worked. So I finished my contract. I drove an hour and a half back from the desert school that I was working in, and I got on a plane to Morocco. And when we got there, we were in Bereshid, just outside of Casablanca. And there I met lots and lots of people that were going to be participating on this mission. There was a plastic surgeon from Hawaii. There was a speech and language therapist from Canada. There was a nurse from Belgium. There were other doctors from Morocco and Jordan. And as they went round this table in this hotel that we were, they kept saying, oh, I'm a plastic surgeon from Hawaii, and I'm Candace. I'm a speech and language therapist from Canada. And I was like thinking, wow, what am I going to say? Because I'm just here to see how Operation Smile works. And as it came round the table and it got closer to me, somebody on my right-hand side stood up and said, and this is Morag. She's the new executive director of Operation Smile UAE. And I was like, wow, when did I apply for that job? So it's kind of a funny thing, I got up in the morning of the 30th of June in the UAE and was an educational advisor. And I went to bed in Morocco that same night as an executive director of a charity. So it's kind of a funny thing. So I didn't actually apply for it. But the next day, I knew that was what I was destined to become. Because the next day, everything started to fall into place. This hospital that had been given to us at the very last minute because there was a change in cities where the mission was going to take place had nothing in it. And all of a sudden, there was all sorts of things that were coming in. The cargo arrived from the US, and everybody got into helping putting things together. And by the end of that day, there was a hospital already with an operating room, with pre and post-op beds, and everything was just there. So the day after that, all the patients started to arrive. And just like on the video that you saw just previously, all these patients with these huge gaping holes in their lips and in their mouths turned up with their parents. And the biggest thing that was for me was when I bent down to speak to some of these children, they looked at me with very sad eyes and almost scared. And they looked at me as if to say, why are you being nice to me? Because nobody else is. And having been a teacher and an education advisor and worked with little ones and older ones, I could not accept that any child be made to feel that way. I didn't think it was fair. So after 6 days of working there, during that mission, taking notes, looking to see how Operation Smile worked, I came back to the UAE, and the Sheikh said to me, "What do you think? What do you think?" And I said, "Sheikh Aliazia, I don't know what we're waiting for. Let's just do this."
I mean, that's a truly amazing story and quite an intriguing one. So you didn't you didn't really plan on being the executive director for Operation Smile UAE, but you got there. So how much do you think your background in being a teacher and being part of an education career track do you think has impacted the way you've taken on the role as executive director?
Oh, well, let me tell you, there were many moments for the whole first year and maybe for the second year too. And I thought, I can't do this. This is not me. My whole background is education, working with teachers, putting teachers into classrooms, writing lesson plans and all the rest of it. My whole life has never been about asking people for money. And I found that very, very difficult to begin with. And it took me a long time. Being a teacher, I was used to speaking to people. So that made it very easy for me. I could go into meetings with 10 people, 30 people, 300 people. It didn't faze me one little bit. But asking people for money or help was something really, really different for me. It was difficult for me to get to grips with that. But there was one day that I came back to the office, and in the office we had pictures of all of these children. And I looked at them and I thought, you know, if I don't ask for help for these children, who will? And that's when it struck me. And I said, I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for these children because these children don't have a voice. They're too shy. The people their parents don't know if they can have this operation. They don't know how to ask for it. And so that was when I felt that it was my job to help these parents and these children ask for what they really needed.
Okay, so we're going to open up to questions from our audience. So if anyone has a question that they would like to ask Morag, please unmute your mic and ask your question. Do you have any takers?
I just have to say that, Morag, you're being extremely humble. You are truly a powerhouse behind Operation Smile UAE, and you know the way that you can get people to sign up and volunteer, and you can get hospitals to commit, and you can get the funding. It's honestly, without you, I don't think that the organization would have achieved. It's the UAE chapter is really young, but I think that for such a young chapter, it's achieved a lot in such a small country with its expat population. So kudos to you. And I think it's a truly remarkable story. And you and your team have actually changed lives for a lot of children and families in Dubai, in the UAE. So well done. And I'm very thrilled that I met you all those years ago, back in 2011 when you just started the charity. So, so it's an honor knowing you, Morag.
Well, thank you. But as I keep saying, I couldn't have done it without all the help from students, from volunteers, from staff. It takes the whole team to be able to do this. And it takes people that have got the same vision and the same drive behind them to be able to make this happen.
Okay, so if anyone has any questions, just put the little raise your hand symbol, and then I'll call out your name so that you can ask the question. But whilst people are thinking about questions that they want to ask Morag, I will continue asking a few more. So obviously you started off as a teacher. Where was your first teaching job?
Oh, back in Aberdeen where I was born. So yes, I worked for 2 years there, and then I wanted to see the world. So as soon as I got my teaching qualification behind me, then I set off and ended up in Abu Dhabi.
And how long did you stay in the job that you got in Abu Dhabi?
For 6 years. And then after those 6 years, that was in an international school. And then I set up a nursery school because I found that there was a huge lack of facilities, good facilities, where young children could be able to meet with each other, play and learn, without being crushed into cots together and not really being educated or given the chance to play and learn.
So how many years ago was that, do you reckon?
Long years ago. Okay, so I came to the UAE in 1980.
So a long time. And like, how have you progressed in your career as a teacher up until the point that you became an executive director?
Well, I worked in an international school, so I taught different ages in the primary age group, and then I set up a nursery school, so again up to the ages of 4.5 before they went on to primary schools. And then after that, I taught in various facilities, having taught 30-year-old Emiratis on business courses, all different sorts of ages. I've even taught a variety of workers in some of the hotels, so all different nationalities. So it has been a really exciting, interesting phase before I eventually ended up being an education advisor in the school improvement program.
Ayush, you have a question. Do you want to unmute your mic?
Yeah, sure. This is more directed about how the missions have progressed. So since your sort of first mission in Morocco, can you see any sort of visible differences in the quality of care that countries are able to provide to Operation Smile?
I think as the years have progressed, we have started to move away from trying to operate on as many patients as possible in one mission, and really put the care and the quality into it, so that we're not just rushing in to be able to do children and operate on their cleft lips and cleft palates and move away again. We're now looking at more comprehensive care, because many of the patients, once they have their cleft lip repaired or their cleft palate repaired, they also need speech and language therapy, or they need some dental work or orthodontic work. So we don't want to leave these children just with their cleft lip or the cleft palate repaired. We want to make sure that they've got the correct nutrition, they've got the help with their dental care, with their speech, so that they have got the best opportunity in life.
Following on from that, what different countries have you gone to on medical missions?
I've been to Morocco, I've been to Jordan, the Philippines, Vietnam, and of course the UAE.
And how do you think some of them differed from each other? Like some
of the hospitals, the quality and the care in the hospitals vastly differed. In Jordan, the hospital was fairly okay. In Vietnam, we had very, very little facilities at our disposal. The post-op wards, some of the beds were just beds with a spring across them. There was no mattress, there were no sheets. So we had to provide quilts and everything that I had brought over that had been donated to us from Etihad Airways. And then, in the Philippines, there wasn't really a post-op ward. It was in a big open hall, and they were sleeping on sort of like sunbeds. And that was where their post-op wards were. So each and every place is different. I have so many stories from different places that we have gone to.
Do you see yourself going back to teaching?
No. Not teaching in classrooms, put it like that. I'm always willing to help students develop leadership skills, and I'm always willing to work with student programs. But working in a classroom, no, I think I've moved on from that.
Sama, do you want to unmute your mic?
Yes, I just wanted to ask you, in your opinion, what do you think is the biggest challenge that you face on like a daily basis, especially like now with the situation of COVID? I feel like it gets a bit harder to encourage people and talk to them about volunteering and stuff. So what do you think is the biggest challenge?
Um, yes, it's not so easy just now. So many of our community volunteers phone us on a daily basis and ask, when we're going to do events and when they can come back and help us in the office and when they can do this. And that's really difficult at the moment. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know when COVID is going to disappear. So we're continually coming up with new ideas of things that they can do either from home or in small groups or online or something like this. So we're continually working together. Our medical volunteers have never stopped. Let me just say to this. And Zainab is on the online today, and she's one of our pediatricians.
So is Deepti.
And Deepti is on as well. So we have got our medical volunteers are continually involved with our patients. And many of our patients are all over the UAE. So we've got patients in Ras Al Khaimah, in Dubai, in Ajman, Sharjah, Fujairah, Abu Dhabi, Al Ain. So we've been working with our doctors and our dentists and some of our nurses. And so if we need to see patients, but are in other emirates, as you know, it's very difficult to come in and out of Abu Dhabi at the moment because of the COVID restrictions. So they've got to be able to have COVID tests before they come in. And so we've actually been working with our volunteers in the other emirates, and they have been absolutely amazing, seeing our patients for us, asking their hospitals and their clinics to come on board and allow them to see the patients without having to pay huge amounts of money and everything. So, our medical volunteers have never stopped. And just about 4 weeks ago, we were allowed to do a very small mission in Cleveland Clinic. And many of our volunteers from all over the Emirates willingly came and went through the COVID testing and everything to come and be able to operate on these 8 patients in Abu Dhabi.
So obviously there are lots of different difficulties, challenges that you face with COVID, without COVID. What kind of strategies do you use to keep yourself motivated and keep the mission of Operation Smile UAE going?
I have a great team. We get together on at first we were all working from home. Now most of us are back working in the office, but we go through we get our temperature checked every time that we come in, and we record that. We wear our masks in the office. We're still fairly socially distanced, but we're not accepting any volunteers into the offices at the moment, apart from when we were doing the mission and we had our medical volunteers, but they all had to be COVID tested as well. So we stick to those restrictions, but we try to keep each other really going. We have a weekly meeting, which we did when we were all at home, working from home. We organized a weekly meeting on Zoom so that we could all keep up to date with each other and let us know what was happening. So each person would be able to have a time. So the student programs would say what they were doing, the medical programs, they would say what they were doing. Our recycle program never stopped. And then, I would come on with all different sort of things, and we would look at strategies for fundraising in different ways. So we keep each other really going, and we come up with different ideas.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Morag, for joining us on this. I'm sure everyone got a great insight into what you do as an executive director, as well as how you actually got to this point. Okay, so that's all we've got time for today. It is now 8 o'clock, exactly when I said we'd be finished. So I hope everyone enjoyed today. Like I said, it was the first Student Social Sunday. So next week, we have Social Student Sundays again, and our speaker next, it's Dr. Zainab that you saw on the call earlier. who was praising Morag for everything she does. So Dr. Zainab is a pediatrician. She's been on a couple of our missions locally as well as internationally as well. So that's what you can look forward to next week. And if you know of any other students that would enjoy this, please remind them to come on board and take part. And we will be updating our Instagram page, OSUAE Stud Pro, with all updates about what's happening with the UAE student programs, including our upcoming ULEAD in mid-December. But for just now, I'm going to say good night and goodbye to all of you. Thank you for participating.